The champagne glass slipped from my fingers. Not all the way, just enough that the liquid sloshed against the rim, catching the dim hallway light. 15 feet ahead, pressed against the wall outside the penthouse suite, Malcolm Reed had his mouth on someone's neck. Her laugh was high and breathless. His hand gripped her waist like he owned it. The woman wasn't his wife. I knew because I'd seen Diane Reed's photo on his desk every single day for 3 years. This woman was younger, taller, wearing a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. Malcolm's eyes flicked toward me. No surprise, no guilt, just that slow, calculated smile he gave when closing deals. He straightened his tie with one hand, kept the other on her hip, and said, "You're working late, Cleo." His voice was smooth, casual, like I'd just walked past him in the break room, instead of catching him mid-affair. My throat closed. The hallway stretched impossibly long behind me. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs had turned to concrete. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a problem to solve. Then he turned back to her, dismissing me completely. That's when I understood. I wasn't a witness. I was furniture, and furniture doesn't talk. My name is Cleo Briggs, and I'm 31 years old. For the past 3 years, I've been Malcolm Reed's executive assistant at Thornton Global Industries. I've answered his calls at midnight, canceled his meetings when his hangovers were too bad, lied to his wife about where he was. I told myself it was strategy, that loyalty meant job security, that if I just kept my head down and worked harder than everyone else, I'd eventually get the promotion I'd been promised. Director of Operations, my own team, a salary that didn't require 3 roommates. But that night in the hallway shattered every illusion I'd built. Malcolm Reed wasn't a demanding boss. He was a predator in expensive suits. And I'd spent 3 years helping him hunt. The worst part? I wasn't even special enough to threaten. He knew I'd stay quiet because women like me always did. We needed the paycheck too badly. Needed the reference letter. Needed to believe that keeping someone else's secrets would somehow protect our own futures. So I went home that night, scrubbed my hands until they burned, and promised myself I'd find another job. Just 6 more months. Maybe a year. Then I'd be free. I showed up at 7:45 the next morning like always. Smiled. Made his coffee. Pretended I hadn't seen anything. The Monday morning executive meeting started exactly how it always did. Malcolm at the head of the conference table, silver hair perfectly styled, navy suit pressed sharp enough to cut. His inner circle arranged around him like disciples. Gerald from finance, Patricia from legal, Vincent from marketing, all of them older, whiter, richer. I sat in the corner with my laptop, taking notes nobody would read, feeling invisible in the way I'd grown used to. Then the door opened. She walked in wearing a charcoal suit and heels that clicked against the marble floor with absolute certainty. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her jewelry was minimal but expensive. Real diamonds, not the kind I wore. Every head turned. Malcolm's face did something I'd never seen before. It went completely blank. Not surprised. Not angry. Just empty, like someone had unplugged him. She set her leather briefcase on the table and smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Professional. Controlled. Dangerous. "Good morning. I'm Diane Reed, your new Chief Operating Officer. I know this is unexpected, but I'm looking forward to working with all of you." Her gaze swept the room and landed on me for just a fraction of a second. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, maybe. Or curiosity. Then she opened her briefcase and pulled out an agenda. "Let's begin." Malcolm pulled me into his office the second the meeting ended. He didn't grab my arm or raise his voice. He didn't need to. The door clicked shut behind us with that heavy, expensive sound that only executive suites have. He walked to his desk, straightened a pen that didn't need straightening, and turned to face me. His expression was calm. Too calm. You didn't see anything last Friday. It wasn't a question. I stood there, fingers digging into my palms, trying to keep my breathing steady. My brain screamed at me to nod, to agree, to do whatever it took to survive this conversation. "I don't know what you mean," I said. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. He smiled. That same smile from the hallway. "Good. That's good, Cleo. You're smart. Smarter than most people give you credit for." He picked up a folder from his desk and held it out to me. New project. High priority. I need someone I can trust to handle it quietly. The folder was heavy. Expensive paper. The kind reserved for deals worth millions. I took it because refusing wasn't an option. You've always been good at your job, he continued. Let's keep it that way. I nodded, smiled, said thank you, and walked out of his office with my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the folder twice. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at my ceiling, replaying his words over and over. He thought I was controllable, predictable, safe. He was wrong. Diane Reed wasn't what I expected. I'd spent 3 years imagining Malcolm's wife as some kind of ice queen. Cold, distant, too busy with charity galas and country club lunches to notice what her husband was doing. But the woman who walked into my cubicle that Wednesday afternoon was nothing like the fantasy I'd built. She knocked on the frame, even though the space was open, smiled when I looked up, asked if I had a minute like my time actually mattered. Cleo, right? She had a tablet in her hands, the screen covered in notes. I've been reviewing staffing structures, and your name keeps appearing in places it shouldn't. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry you're doing the work of 3 people. She turned the tablet toward me. Charts, spreadsheets, color-coded timelines showing every project I'd managed, every crisis I'd solved, every late night I'd stayed to fix someone else's mistakes. And you're listed as an executive assistant. I stared at the screen, not trusting my voice. That changes now, Diane said. Her tone was firm but not unkind. I'm reassigning you to work directly under me. Same salary for now, but we'll revisit that in 30 days. You've earned better. She extended her hand. I shook it, feeling the weight of her rings against my palm. Real gold, real stones, the kind of jewelry that came with real power. Thank you, I managed. She smiled. Don't thank me yet. I have very high standards. As she walked away, guilt crawled up my throat like acid. She had no idea what I knew. No idea I'd watched her husband cheat, and said nothing. But looking at those charts, seeing my work finally acknowledged, something shifted inside me. I wasn't going to protect Malcolm anymore. I started small. A deleted email here. A calendar conflict there. Nothing obvious. Nothing he could trace back to me. Malcolm had spent years teaching me how to cover his tracks. Now I'd use those same skills against him. I created a folder on my personal laptop, backed it up on 3 separate drives, started collecting things, booking confirmations for hotel rooms he'd told Diane were client dinners, credit card receipts from restaurants in cities he claimed never to visit, text messages he'd asked me to delete, but I'd screenshot first, call logs showing numbers that appeared at 2 in the morning. I didn't have a plan yet, didn't know what I'd do with any of it, but every piece of evidence felt like armor, like I was building something that could protect me when everything inevitably fell apart. Malcolm noticed the shift before I expected him to. Small things at first. He'd ask me to handle something, and I'd politely suggest someone else might be better suited. He'd invite me to after-hours drinks with clients, and I'd claim prior commitments. I stopped laughing at his jokes. Stopped staying late unless Diane specifically requested it. One Thursday afternoon, he appeared at my desk. Everything okay, Cleo? You seem distant lately. I looked up at him with the blandest smile I could manage. Everything's fine. Just busy with the new projects Diane assigned. His jaw tightened. Just for a second. Then the mask slid back into place. Right. Well, let me know if you need anything. He walked away, and I exhaled for what felt like the first time in minutes. I was playing with fire, but for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like I was burning alone. Diane called me into her office on a Friday afternoon. The view from her window stretched across the entire city, buildings and bridges and water sparkling in the autumn light. She had 2 cups of coffee waiting. Real coffee, not the break room sludge. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. I need your honest opinion about something. She slid a personnel file toward me. I recognized the name immediately. Nina Ortiz, project manager for Division C. Brilliant. Hardworking. The kind of woman who'd earned every promotion through sheer competence. Malcolm wants her terminated, Diane said. Her voice was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. claims she's underperforming, missing deadlines, creating friction with her team. I knew it was a lie. Nina had pushed back against Malcolm 2 weeks ago when he tried to take credit for her department's success during a board presentation. She'd corrected him in front of everyone. Politely, professionally, but publicly. He'd smiled and thanked her, then added her name to his list. I looked at Diane, really looked at her. Tried to read whether this was a test or a trap. Don't fire her, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. She's one of the best managers we have. If Malcolm has a problem with her, it's not about her performance. Diane's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. Why would he want her gone then? I held her gaze, because she doesn't let him rewrite history. The silence stretched between us like a wire pulled taut. Then Diane closed the file. Thank you, Cleo. That's all I needed to know. I left her office with my heart hammering against my ribs, knowing I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. Malcolm started playing games after that. Subtle ones. Professional ones. The kind that looked like mistakes until you realized the pattern. Meetings moved without notice. Emails I'd supposedly never sent showing up as evidence of my incompetence. Deadlines for projects I'd never been told about suddenly urgent and overdue. He was gaslighting me. Systematically. Carefully. Trying to make me doubt my own memory and competence. It almost worked. I spent 3 days thinking I was losing my mind before Diane pulled me aside. I've been watching, she said. We were in the parking garage, her voice low enough that the concrete walls swallowed the sound. The missed meetings? The lost emails? It's not you. It's him. Relief flooded through me so fast I almost cried. He's done this before, Diane continued. To women who get too close to seeing who he really is. He makes them think they're crazy until they quit or get fired. She looked at me with something that might have been sympathy, or might have been recognition. You're not crazy, Cleo. You're being handled. That's when I knew. She wasn't just suspicious. She was hunting. And somehow, without planning it, I'd become her ally. What do you need from me? I asked. Diane smiled. It wasn't warm. Everything you've been collecting. Every receipt, every email, every little thing you've noticed that didn't add up. I need all of it. I thought about my folder. The backup drives. 3 years of evidence I'd gathered without knowing why. I can do that, I said. Her smile widened. Good, because we're going to take him apart piece by piece. The company's 25th anniversary gala was everything Malcolm loved. Expensive venue. Expensive people. Expensive champagne flowing like water while he played the role of visionary leader. He gave a speech that made half the room tear up. Talked about family and loyalty and building something that mattered. Called Diane the love of my life while she stood beside him in a red dress that probably cost more than my car. I watched from the back of the ballroom, holding a glass I hadn't touched, feeling sick. Then he excused himself to take a call. I followed him. Not obviously. Just drifted toward the hallway where the restrooms were, keeping enough distance that it looked coincidental. I saw him slip into a service stairwell instead. Heard a woman's laugh echo in the concrete space. Younger, breathless, excited. I didn't need to see more. Didn't need to record it or document it. I just needed to know it was still happening. That he was still exactly who I'd seen him be that night 6 weeks ago. When I returned to the ballroom, Diane was watching the stairwell door with an expression I couldn't read. Our eyes met across the crowd. She knew. Maybe not the details, but she knew. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and forced smiles. But when I left, I sent Diane an email with a single line. Service stairwell, 9:47 p.m. She responded at midnight. Thank you. That's when I realized we weren't just gathering evidence anymore. We were building a case. I wasn't the only one Malcolm had buried. That became clear when I started reaching out. Carefully, quietly, through LinkedIn messages and coffee shop meetings that looked casual enough to avoid suspicion. Simone James had been a senior analyst 3 years ago. Left suddenly right before her promotion was supposed to be announced. The official story was she'd gotten a better offer elsewhere. The truth? Malcolm had propositioned her during a business trip. When she refused, her performance reviews mysteriously tanked. He's protected, Simone told me over coffee in a downtown cafe. Her hands shook around her cup. I tried going to human resources. They told me there was no evidence, that it was my word against his. 2 weeks later, my contract wasn't renewed. I showed her the folder I'd been building. Not everything, just enough. Her eyes widened. You could actually do it, she whispered. You could actually take him down. I met with 4 more women over the next 3 weeks. Each one had a similar story. Harassment, intimidation, careers destroyed because they'd said no or pushed back or simply existed in a way that made Malcolm uncomfortable. Each one thought they were alone. Each one cried when they realized they weren't. And each one gave me something. Old emails, text messages, human resources complaints that had been filed and then mysteriously vanished from the system. By the end of October, my folder wasn't just evidence. It was a weapon. And Diane knew exactly how to aim it. Diane, and I never used the word revenge. She called it accountability. I called it justice. But what we were really doing was war. We met in her office after hours, door locked, blinds drawn. Spread everything across her desk, like we were planning a military campaign. Which, in a way, we were. He's careful, Diane said, studying a timeline I created. Every affair has been with someone outside the company, or someone too junior to be taken seriously. Every financial irregularity is small enough to explain away as accounting errors. He's been doing this for years. I nodded. So we need something he can't explain. She looked up at me. What's the one thing he thinks he's completely safe from? I thought about it. About 3 years of watching Malcolm operate. The way he smiled at board members. The way he controlled every narrative. The way he made people believe he was untouchable. Himself, I said. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. That he'll always see the trap before he steps in it. Diane's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then we make him think he's winning. Right up until he's not. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Names, dates, connections. A map of Malcolm's empire built on secrets and silence and carefully maintained lies. This is going to take time, she said. Months, maybe. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. He'll fight back. Hard. I thought about the women I'd met. The careers destroyed. The fear in their eyes when they talked about what Malcolm had done. I'm not backing down, I said. Diane nodded. Good. Because neither am I. The first crack appeared in early November. A spreadsheet I wasn't supposed to see. Gerald from finance had sent it to Diane for approval on a routine budget review. I was printing copies for a board meeting when I noticed something odd. Malcolm's executive compensation over the past 4 years. Bonuses. Stock options. Performance incentives. His total package was 4 times what Diane made as COO. 4 times. Even though she'd been running half the company for 18 months. Even though her divisions consistently outperformed his. Even though every objective metric showed she generated more value. I made 2 extra copies. One for my folder. One for Diane. She called me into her office 10 minutes later. The spreadsheet was open on her computer screen. Her face was calm, but her knuckles were white around her coffee cup. Did you know about this? I shook my head. I just saw it this morning. She stared at the numbers. He's been systematically underpaying me while voting himself raises. For years. I waited, knowing this was bigger than infidelity, bigger than affairs. This was theft. We need an auditor, Diane said. Her voice was ice. Someone external. Someone he doesn't control. I thought about Patricia in legal. About how she'd look the other way every time Malcolm pushed boundaries. About how the entire executive team was built on loyalty to him. It has to come from the board, I said. If you request it directly, he'll know you're coming for him. Diane nodded slowly. Then we need someone on the board who already doesn't trust him. She pulled up a contact list, ran her finger down the names, stopped on one. Warren Greaves. He voted against Malcolm's last bonus package, called it excessive. She looked at me. How do we get information to him without it looking like we're the source? I smiled. I might have an idea. Warren Greaves received an anonymous package 2 weeks later, mailed from a downtown post office, untraceable. Inside was a flash drive containing every financial discrepancy I'd found over the past 3 years. Expense reports that didn't match receipts. vendor payments to companies that didn't exist, bonuses approved for projects that never happened, and a comparison chart showing executive compensation across the entire C-suite. The gaps were impossible to ignore. Diane heard through back channels that Warren had called an emergency audit. Independent firm. Full access to financial records going back 5 years. Malcolm found out the next day. I was at my desk when he stormed past, his face the color of old brick. Heard him screaming at Gerald through the closed office door. Heard something heavy hit the wall. When he finally emerged, his tie was crooked and his carefully maintained composure had cracked. His eyes found me across the office. For just a second, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. He walked over to my desk slowly, deliberately, leaned down so his face was close to mine. If I find out you had anything to do with this, he said quietly, I will destroy you. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. I don't know what you're talking about. He stared at me for a long moment, then straightened and walked away. I waited until he was gone before I let myself shake. Waited until I was in the bathroom to text Diane. He knows someone's coming for him. He just doesn't know who yet. Malcolm tried to isolate me after that. Subtle at first. Stopped CCing me on important emails. Excluded me from meetings I'd normally attend. Started routing his requests through other assistants. He was cutting me out of his inner circle. Testing to see if I'd panic. If I'd come crawling back. I didn't. Instead, I used the distance to my advantage. Started having lunch with people I'd never talked to before. Administrative staff. Junior analysts. The people Malcolm never noticed because they weren't important enough to threaten him. And they talked. About things they'd seen. Things they'd heard. Things they knew but were too scared to report. I learned that Malcolm had a habit of taking young female employees to client dinners and then pressuring them to continue the evening at hotel bars. That he'd killed 3 internal harassment complaints by promising the victims promotions they never received. That his assistant before me had quit without notice and refused to explain why. Every conversation added another piece to the puzzle, another thread connecting his behavior to a pattern impossible to dismiss as coincidence. I documented all of it. Names, dates, details, building a web of evidence that grew denser every day. Diane watched from her office. I could feel her approval in the way she nodded when we passed in hallways, in the way she always seemed to be nearby when Malcolm tried to corner me. We didn't need to speak. We both knew what we were building, and we both knew it was almost ready. Malcolm's careful image to pieces. Within 72 hours, his LinkedIn profile was deleted. His Twitter account went dark. The consulting firm he'd claimed to be joining released a statement saying there had been a misunderstanding and they had no relationship with Malcolm Reed. He'd been erased. Not by us, by the simple act of people finally seeing the truth. I watched it happen from my desk, watched his empire crumble in real time, and felt absolutely nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a quiet, steady certainty that some people get exactly what they deserve. January brought changes. Real ones. The board promoted Diane to CEO. Made it official with a contract that paid her what she'd always been worth. She accepted on one condition. That the company establish an independent ethics committee. Real oversight. Real consequences. Real protection for employees who reported misconduct. They agreed. First order of business? Hiring me as director of strategic operations, my own office, my own team, a salary that meant I could finally afford to live alone. You earned this, Diane said when she offered me the position, not because of what we did to Malcolm, because of the work you've been doing all along. I took the job, moved into an office 3 doors down from hers, spent my first week implementing new reporting structures and training programs, making sure what happened to me couldn't happen to anyone else. Nina got her promotion, the one Malcolm had blocked. 3 other women who'd been pushed out received settlement offers and public apologies. The company established a scholarship fund for women in business, named it after Simone James, the analyst who'd been forced out 3 years earlier. Small changes, but real ones, the kind that might actually matter. I kept the folder I'd built, the evidence, the timeline, not because I thought Malcolm would come back, but because I wanted to remember. Remember what it felt like to be invisible, to be afraid, to be small. So I'd never let anyone make me feel that way again. Malcolm tried to rebuild, started a consulting practice, posted on LinkedIn about leadership and integrity, tried to position himself as someone who'd learned from his mistakes. Nobody hired him. Clients ghosted his emails. Professional networks quietly removed him from membership. His reputation had been permanently shattered. Diane showed me an article one morning. Disgraced CEO struggles to find work. The photo showed Malcolm leaving a coffee shop, shoulders hunched, looking 10 years older than he had 6 months ago. Do you feel sorry for him? She asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I feel sorry for whoever believes him if he manages to convince them he's changed. She nodded. He'll try again somewhere else. Men like him always do. But at least it won't be here. That afternoon, I got an email from someone I didn't recognize. A woman who'd worked at Malcolm's previous company, before Thornton Global. She'd read about the investigation and wanted me to know she'd filed a complaint against him 8 years ago. It had been dismissed. She'd been forced out, and Malcolm had moved to a bigger company with a bigger salary. Thank you for stopping him, she wrote. I couldn't. But you did. I stared at that email for a long time, thinking about how many women had tried before me, how many had been silenced, how much luck and privilege and timing had gone into making sure my voice was finally heard. I replied with 2 words. We stopped him because it wasn't just me. It was never just me. It was every woman who'd spoken up, every person who'd believed us, every system that finally worked the way it was supposed to. We did it together, and that mattered more than anything else. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and rain. I stood at my office window, watching the city wake up below me. My calendar was full. Budget meetings, strategic planning sessions, interviews with candidates for new positions we were creating. Real work, important work, work that mattered. My phone buzzed. Text from Diane. Coffee. I grabbed my coat and met her in the lobby. We walked to the cafe across the street, the same one where I'd met Simone all those months ago. Sat at the same table, ordered the same drinks. The board wants to do a profile piece, Diane said, about what we built here, about the changes we've made. I stirred my coffee. What did you tell them? That it's not about us. It's about making sure this never happens again. She looked at me over her cup. But they're going to ask to interview you. Are you ready for that? I thought about the woman who'd walked into Malcolm's office 3 years ago, desperate for approval, willing to compromise everything for a chance at advancement. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd learned that real power came from speaking truth, not keeping secrets. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. We finished our coffee, walked back to the office together. Partners, not because of what we'd survived, but because of what we'd built afterward. That night, I deleted Malcolm's contact from my phone. It was a small thing, symbolic, but it felt like closing a door that had been open too long. I was free, finally, completely, and I'd never take that for granted again. The profile piece ran in the business section. How 2 women rebuilt a company from the inside out. They used a photo of Diane and me in the conference room, professional, confident, smiling. The article detailed the changes we'd implemented, the ethics committee, the new reporting structures, the scholarship fund. It mentioned Malcolm only briefly, as context, not as the main story, because he wasn't. The main story was what came after, the rebuilding, the women who'd found their voices, the culture that had been transformed. I framed a copy and hung it in my office, not out of pride, exactly, more as a reminder of how far I'd come, of how much work remained. My team grew, 8 people reporting directly to me. Smart, talented, diverse. I made sure they knew their work mattered, made sure they had the resources they needed, made sure nobody ever felt invisible. On my first anniversary as director, Diane called me into her office. The board wants to create a new position, Chief Ethics Officer, someone who reports directly to me and has authority across all departments. She smiled. They want you. I blinked. Me. You built the framework. You know what went wrong and how to prevent it. You have the credibility. the trust, the knowledge. She leaned forward. This is bigger than operations, Cleo. This is about defining who we are as a company. And you're the right person to do it. I thought about it. About the responsibility, the visibility, the target it might paint on my back. Then I thought about all the women who'd never gotten this chance. I took the position. Chief Ethics Officer. My name went on the executive directory. My office moved to the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view that stretched all the way to the harbor. The first thing I did was establish a confidential reporting system. Anonymous. Secure. Impossible for anyone to manipulate or bury. Then I hired an entirely external team to review every complaint. No internal interference. No conflicts of interest. No more silence. The second thing I did was reach out to every woman who'd been forced out during Malcolm's tenure. Offered them consulting positions. Asked for their input on policies. Gave them a platform to shape the culture that had failed them. Not everyone wanted to return. Some wounds were too deep. But the ones who did brought wisdom that couldn't be taught. They knew exactly what needed to change because they'd paid the price for what was broken. 6 months into the role, I presented at a national conference on workplace ethics, spoke to a room of 300 executives about accountability and transparency, shared our story without naming names, focused on systems instead of individuals. Afterward, a woman approached me, probably mid-40s, expensive suit, tired eyes. I'm going through something similar at my company, she said quietly, but I don't know if I have the strength to fight it. I thought about standing in that hallway, watching Malcolm dismiss me like furniture, thought about every moment of fear and doubt that followed. You're stronger than you think, I told her. And you're not alone. I gave her my card, told her to call if she needed advice. She did, 3 weeks later, and I helped her build her own folder, her own case, her own path to justice, because that's what this was really about. Not revenge, not even justice for what happened to me, but making sure the next woman didn't have to fight alone. 2 years after Malcolm's termination, I stood in the same conference room where Diane had announced she was COO. But this time, I was the one at the podium. The company was launching a national initiative, ethics training programs for other corporations, consulting services for organizations trying to rebuild broken cultures, a foundation to support women pursuing careers in male-dominated industries. We called it the Lionheart Initiative because courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was choosing to speak even when your voice shook. Diane stood in the back of the room, arms crossed, smiling with genuine pride. Nina and the other women who'd stood beside me were scattered throughout the crowd. And in the front row sat Simone James, the analyst who'd been forced out before me, who'd given me the courage to start collecting evidence. She'd joined our board of advisors, was using her experience to help other women navigate hostile work environments, transforming her pain into purpose. I looked at all of them, these women who'd refused to stay silent, who'd risked everything to tell the truth, who'd rebuilt what had been broken. This isn't my story, I said. It's ours, and it's still being written. The applause was thunderous, but what mattered more were the messages that came after, from women across the country, sharing their own stories, asking for help, finding their voices. Malcolm's name barely came up anymore. He'd become a cautionary tale, a footnote in someone else's success story. And that felt exactly right. I drove home that evening in a car I'd bought with my own money, pulled into a parking space at an apartment I rented by myself. No roommates, no fear, no secrets weighing me down. My phone buzzed. Text from Diane. Proud of you. I smiled. Typed back. Proud of us. Because that was the truth. I hadn't won alone. I'd won because women I'd never met had fought before me. Because women I'd reached out to had stood beside me. Because one woman with power had chosen to use it for something bigger than herself. That night, I finally deleted the folder. The evidence. The timeline. The 3 years of secrets I'd carried. I didn't need it anymore. The story was over. A new one was beginning. And this time, I was writing it myself.